Episode 1 of Hell Motel begins in autumn 1995 with a big storm. It's your typical horror setup as a young couple called Joey and Caitlin decide to spend the night at Cold River Motel to wait out the bad weather. The newlyweds are greeted by a couple at the reception who let them stay in their honeymoon suite. The camera lingers over the key, which lists the number 7, while the receptionist sports a spot of blood on their sleeve, which the pair don't notice. Unfortunately, a masked killer shows up at their door and proceeds to kill the pair. Fast forward 30 years and a group show up at Cold River Motel, ready for a weekend of true crime shenanigans. The past murders have been colloquially known as the Cold River Slaughter, and it's a big deal within the true crime community. Many people have been theorising and debating over everything that's taken place for a while. The motel was under new management though, having been taken over by a couple called Portia and Ruby. On the way, we briefly meet the group, so let's dive into who they all are, shall we? There's a faded scream queen called Paige who used to play Caitlin in the feature picture back in the day. Spiritualist Crow is laid back, while true crime writer Blake is the complete opposite. There's also a murder-obsessed artist called Kawayan, a true crime academic called Andy, and a woman called Adriana who, well, she basically works as a flight attendant and goes around banging every serial killer she can find. I mean, I guess everybody has to have a hobby. The group soon settle in and naturally there's no cell signal up here, but the couple do have satellite Wi-Fi. At dinner, there are mixed reactions over the chef, Hemingway, serving up a main course of Caitlin, it's apparently lamb but done as a head, and a glass of the chef's blood mixed with vodka.
What the fuck?
When a couple show up asking for help and a place to stay, Portia and Ruby are cold and not particularly pleased, and instead relegate the pair back out to the RV in the parking lot. One of the characters we seem to be settling on more than others here is Paige. We see some of the flashbacks to her time on set, and that night the owners convince Paige to dress up as Caitlin so they can get some shots, but it just makes her feel more uncomfortable. Paige speaks to the couple in the RV and tries to get a ride home when this is all said and done. Her conscience is niggling at her, given she's getting paid to recreate Caitlin's experience, and the whole thing just unnerves her completely. She doesn't want to do this anymore, even if her career is going nowhere. The RV guests eventually manage to get a room inside the motel, partly thanks to their showers not working, but Portia and Ruby aren't particularly happy about them being here. While they chill in their room, down in the basement the seance goes ahead. All the characters stand around the circle, but Crow mentions how the circle is not complete, thanks to Hemingway, their chef, being absent. It turns out Hemingway has been killed, locked in a sauna where he's burned to death. Naturally, nobody believes that the motel owners are innocent, especially when the Wi-Fi signal fades. To make matters worse, the RV has been sabotaged and blown to bits, trapping everybody inside the motel for the time being. However, as we soon come to realise, that nice couple from the RV, Floyd and Shirley, are actually the killers from the original massacre, and they sacrificed Caitlin back in the day, which is where episode 1 of Hell Motel comes to an end. Episode 2 of Hell Motel starts with a flashback as we see Portia and Ruby buying the motel. Portia is more skeptical compared to her girlfriend, although the true crime goldmine they could be sitting on is too alluring to turn away from. Back in the present, the group argue out in the rain next to the burning RV. The weekend is quickly going from bad to worse, especially as the group start pointing fingers at the motel owners as the killers. Tempers are flared and suspicions are high. In the middle of this, our RV owners, Shirley and Floyd, encourage the group not to flee into the woods. This is for their own nefarious schemes of course, but Crow seems to be the only one unsure whether these two can actually be trusted. Alone though, Floyd and Shirley mull over what's happened. Apparently they're not responsible for Hemingway's death, given someone got to him before they could. They theorise that there could be a Satanist here already, someone looking to finish the job that this couple started all those years ago. Now Caitlin was a ritual sacrifice whose death was supposed to help open a gateway and complete the ritual to release Baphomet. While Floyd and Shirley work to root out exactly who this killer is, we do know that these two are definitely behind the RV blowing up. While Portia and Ruby look to clean up the mess in the basement, each of the true crime gang buddy up for the night. Andy confesses his fear about being next in this horror series, while Crow offers him some words of encouragement. In fact, Crow admits to also being afraid, but he's pretty chill about the whole thing. He can't just sit around and do nothing though. He's going to run into town and try to get them some help. Shirley notices Crow running though and decides Floyd should go and stop him. Apparently they need 9 sacrifices for the portal to open completely, so Crow going walkabouts doesn't do their case or plan any favours. In the bedroom, Portia lashes out at Ruby for talking her into buying the motel. She brings up the grotesque obsession Ruby has with true crime and how this has twisted her love into repulsion. Their argument can be heard across the motel as their loud voices filter through the vents to Paige, who's on her own, and Blake, who finds himself in the presence of Adriana, who wants to get freaky. It's a bit too freaky for Blake though, who winds up handcuffed and at Adriana's mercy. When he pleads to be let go, she simply cuts him across the forearm, and then the pair wind up having sex anyway.
Only without their consent.
Back outside, there's an unnerving conversation between Crow and Floyd as the latter catches up to him in the woods after a tense encounter with a wolf. Crow admits outright that he doesn't trust Floyd, and also that he's pretty suspicious of everybody. Before things can take a turn for the worse though, Andy shows up and they all head back to the motel. In private, Crow warns Andy that Floyd is definitely a killer and he can sense it from the look in his eyes. He thinks they need to stick together. Andy is more skeptical though. As for Shirley, she catches up with Quyan, the art guy. He's starting to lose his mojo, having seen a murder firsthand himself and believing that his artwork is all just a fraud. Quyan winds up questioning himself and Shirley takes advantage of this. She believes he should indulge in murder himself to fully become wrapped up in its work. That night, Crow begins to lose control in his room, pacing around and raving madly, while Portia is killed in her sleep by the killer. Ruby is sleeping beside her when this happens, so we know this killer is definitely not her. When Ruby wakes up in the middle of the night though, she turns on the light and looks over and finds her partner dead, letting out a blood-curdling scream, which is where episode 2 comes to an end. So Hell Motel's double bill rounds out with a clearer picture of how everything slots together. Floyd and Shirley are trying to open some sort of hell dimension to let this Baphomet free, and the cultists are clearly part of this Satanist cult, but we don't know if there are more of them lurking around the area. With Paige having taken most of the focus in episode 1, episode 2 actually relegates her to the back, I mean quite literally given she's just sitting in her room, while we get to focus on everybody else instead. We learn a little more about Crow and Andy here, and their bromance is one of the more surprising aspects of this chapter. However, it's also quite telling that Crow, underneath the facade of calmness, is actually struggling and clearly worried. Shirley and Floyd aren't the only killers here though, which adds a nice little twist to proceedings, and there's somebody else out there picking people off one by one. Now maybe this is a bit of an outlandish theory, but given how much emphasis has been placed on everybody's a suspect except Hemingway, which is said by several different people in this episode alone, maybe Hemingway himself is the killer. The food he cooked up was suspiciously grotesque, and he certainly proven himself to be unhinged enough to potentially stage a dead body and pick the group off one by one. Still, that's just one theory that I have, although the other one could be that Adriana is the one who's behind the murders. We heard her speak quite passionately in the limousine on the way down to the motel to begin with, talking about Baphomet before we even arrived at the motel, along with her being the one who actually saw Hemingway walk down the hallway towards the spa. So I'm putting my 2 cents on either one of these two being responsible for the killings. Beyond that though, the show itself is a little rough around the edges with a super cliched premise, not to mention the stormy night with all the bells and whistles that go with that trope, and somewhat cheap production design and simple fade cuts between scenes. There's also certain camera movements that are a little annoying, like the shaky cam where the cameraman runs after the group as they head outside to the burning RV, that hold this back from being a more polished production. Still, beyond that though, there is enough in this to whet the appetite, and come back next week to see what happens. Thanks for watching, and do let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Smash a like or subscribe to the channel, your support is very much appreciated. I'm Greg Wheeler, and from all of us over here at The Review Geek, we'll see you on the next video.